Hey guys, the family's all back together again. How have you been? Where have you been? Drinking beer. Babies. Babies. It's a hike to bring a baby all this way up to this part of the story. 2 miles away. 20 blocks away that you need. This week we reviewing a book called Gloria O'Brien, History of the Future, in which our major plot point is to solving a petrified bat into beer and drinking it. So we were going to drink shitty beer in honor of the book because they read teenagers and they obviously probably only have access to shitty beer. But then we'd have to drink shitty beer. These two came up or found a recipe online that involves Bacardi, which has a bat. Very topical. So it has a bat. So we put the bat in the beer and now we going to see the future. Sounds crazy, but it's a major plot point. Yeah, that's how they get to see the future. They dissolve a petrified bat. And it was one of the most interesting ways to start a novel. Like opening lines. It all started with that day we drank the bat. You read just like, well, because they always tell you get a good hook in the first line and that's really hard, but I was like, well, I'm hooked. I am drinking. Drink the bat. I was pretty horrified at the suggestion of putting rum in beer because I also got the wrong kind of beer. But this isn't that bad. This is great. The strawberry's really nice. And the mint? You don't have mint in yours. No, I have mint. I made them all with mint. Oh, okay. I was in charge of the beer making. I can't taste the mint at all. And I just said fucking and made them all with mint. So, Gloria O'Brien's History of the Future is a young adult book. This is an advanced reader copy, but it's been out for a while now, so that tells you how long we've had this thing. Gloria O'Brien is a recent high school graduate who is dealing with the fact that her mother committed suicide when she was very young. And she's just now kind of starting to deal with it, and then she and her best friend drink a bat and start getting visions of the future. And through these visions of the future she deals with her teen girl issues of depression, and my mother committed suicide and sort of comes of age and conquers her demons. The thing she sees of the future is a feminist dystopia. Anti-feminist dystopia. Well, I guess the future plays in a lot less than you think it would, because the future she sees is sort of Handmaid's Tale-ish, like woman being oppressed type future. Lisa, you read it first. You read it first. What did you think of Gloria O'Brien's History of the Future? Well, I read it 8 months ago, and so when you guys finally got around to reading it, because I've been telling you you should read it for so long because I loved it so much. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I actually forgot about the feminist dystopia. I just remembered the part about this young girl coming of age and conquering her demons, and that part really stuck with me. The dealing with her mother's suicide, her fear of becoming her mother and then getting past that, and the way it was written, the voice of the character was just so resonating. The dystopia that she sees of the Second Civil War, it plays very little into the actual narrative. I think it was what she needed to see, though, for her to sort of grow up. It was the future she needed, and I don't necessarily believe a lot of people who have read this book, according to what I've seen online, don't like the future. They think it's really unbelievable, like this future could never happen in America. How could you write this future? Funny story. I was explaining to me boyfriend about, and then you know, this anti-feminist, and I explained like how it comes to fruition in the book, and he got kind of really angry. He's like, that would never happen. What the hell? I think that's besides the point. It's the future she needed to see for her journey, and that's what worked for her. I am kind of on team that. I honestly like because it's like once he got to specifically it's fairly early on in the book. It's like third of the way through when she describes the Fair Pay Act. This being sort of like an impetus, and basically the basic thrust is that like however many years into the future there's going to pass legislation that women have to be paid equal for equal work. And the solution that some states find to get around this, which I assume was kind of sort of based off the Affordable Care Act, is that they just don't pay women at all. Like women aren't allowed to work, and my brain kind of made that noise like that Mac noise that went that way. And like the whole book it was like, and then every time it would go to the history of the future portions me brains era going because I'm just like it's too close and too detailed. And so like the reasons the dystopia happened I'm like well that woman being outlawed from working doesn't make any sense that would ruin the economy. But that's exactly what happens. The world falls apart because that happens. Yeah, but they wouldn't. I do not buy that states would pass legislation outlawing women from working. That's why I think it's more of a fantasy kind of thing. That's not what it got at the end. Here's my take on it. How in the beginning of the book they drink the bat to see the future. And that's like, and like how the hell does drinking a petrified bat help you see the okay fine, eh? I'm just gonna write it off. Like that's or deus ex batibus like fine. It's the same thing with the future, like it really do feel like with the bat with the future there. I mean it's like the is there like a term for like a MacGuffin, but it's like it's like a plot point where it, unless you should be anything. But it's about her finding her place in having a future. I think the fact that was something so random kind of speaks to that trope that maybe the author was just saying and it could be anything so just making it. Make it a bat. Make it a bat. And the thing she sees could be anything so I'll make it as ridiculous as possible maybe. Well, at the end of the book she liked because she sees her friend do a thing that she saw, and this kind of confirms to her that the vision she was getting, like she was like dead convinced like yes this is absolutely going to happen and I don't to know how me story is going to end exactly, but I know what role I'm going to play in this horrible future. And so it's like I think we meet it though isn't really, and on a note of ambiguity which I think works to its detriment. Well, I think her seeing the vision of her friend leaving at the end and then that actually happened was supposed to make you be like wait could it be real when you were ready to dismiss entirely but not necessarily confirm it. Because maybe that was coincidence. The protagonist she believes it. All right fine. But also it makes a mean the book never addresses or even flirts with the idea of all right what's going to happen, what are you going to do to try to stop it if it's this terrible. There's sort of this acceptance. It's like the future. Well, it's going to happen and it may roll in it. Which again, it's not about what the future holds, it's about her coming to terms with herself, her own family's history of depression, like how much like her mother she is and or the future she can have that she does have a future. That's the biggest thing. And her seeing that strong role that she plays in it, even if it's not her preventing it from happening, is what gives her the strength to take control of her own life. The things that she does to solve her father's problems with what's going on with the neighbors, and take back what's theirs. Because she sees this active role in her future, she begins to actually create an active role for herself in her own life. They've been living in limbo for 14 years. Another thing about this is like since the dystopia takes up so little of the actual word count, it's not very plot driven. I mean it's a very fast read, but it wasn't. It didn't feel that terribly in terms of just the motion of it. Like literary fiction style. It was almost like a character piece, because it was a lot more profanity than I think I've seen in any book. Like they drop a bomb like once a page. But I feel like this is kind of transcends what's going on with current marketing, y'all, where they re-putting everything into boxes. This could have been written outside of that trend and still have been this more literary piece. Well, I think it does kind of then beg the question because it does read more like literary fiction. It's a short like ya, and it reads quickly like ya, but it also like just in a stylistic way, and in an actual content way it reads more like literary fiction than commercial fiction. So then it does kind of beg the question then, like, what defines ya? Little brown the people who brush a twilight. Because it really does straddle the line between like contemporary, like it reads way more like contemporary fiction than genre fiction. I keep bringing it back, but it made me think again of Octavia Butler. The parable of the sower where you have vague good shit. So good. Vague. 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 Because it's just like it's like the parable of the sower. They just kind of hand wave it like a bunch of crap happened. Like where it's the environment and the economy, and then you have the states stepping, or states like breaking up. You have America breaking up. You have Alaska declaring itself independent. The things that lead up to the fact that you have no one you can depend on. The government can't be dependent on. Having to be dependent You have this like anti-woman super religious like right-wing thing rise up and make life hellacious for the main characters. It becomes much more believable. In here it's not believable. It seems too fast. It seems, but it's kind of not the point. It's just the Deus Ex Machina story thing that is just there to make the character realize she has a purpose. And it's for her journey. I think the future could have been anything as long as she had a role in it. She sees that she has a role. She was afraid she was going to commit suicide like her mother, but she sees herself grow old. But I have to say, as a fan of genre fiction, I think the comparison to Parable of the Sower is pretty apt. Because it's I kept thinking about Handmaid's Tale, which also is kind of super vague on how we got to this point level. And I guess that it's just a personal is for you read just okay, I didn't bother you. And also I have that distance from reading it 8 months ago. I totally forgot about the distance. Because it doesn't matter. What stuck with me was the voice of the writing. The prose it was written in this teenagery voice. So many a books try to make this like quirky teenage voice and it's so overdone or trying too hard and it's obnoxious. Or the quirky teenager. But this she just was awkward and it felt natural and it felt just masterfully crafted. I definitely agree. I think the voice felt very natural but also while being really tight beautiful prose. I felt that the prose was really good. I mean, you read the back of the novel like the blurb on the back and you think, okay, then she becomes Katniss. So it's all gonna be about like her fight to make this future not happen. No, nope, not that at all. Which I think was a good call because it does feel that refreshing. Well, that's what makes it feel refreshing because it's not about that. It's not about stopping the future. It's not about changing it. It's about this is what it's gonna be, but I have a future. It's terrible, but it's a future. I have a purpose. That was another thing that made it really weird was because it was obviously written sort of from the point of view of a depressed person because it was so detached. But at the same, basically the whole book is about breaking up with your best friend. And the main relationship of the book is her and her best friend, and she spends the whole time just being like, I can't stand this bitch. And that I don't know, that did kind of wear me down. It was just like she just kind of spends a whole time being so down on her friend, and I'm like the friend who is also in a very shitty situation. Yeah. It's like one of those things where I feel like then you gonna become an adult and you gonna realize like you were a shitty friend to her too. Yeah. I like that though. I felt like it was realistic. It was. I've been in that relationship. I was that kid. I was a depressed person with the awful friendship, and then I grew up and sort of realized, and I feel like she's on that path to grow too. It's realistic, and I feel like she does get there by the end, that that's her arc. I mean, I would definitely recommend it. I recommended it to me mom in her book group. I was like, I think you guys need to read this. I think I like how it handled the main character's depression and her inner thoughts, but also how she kept them to herself. And their friendship that was kind of just because you read the person across the street and I've known you me whole life. And I think most people have that childhood friend where you look back on it and sometimes those friendships can last, but sometimes it's just like it was literally friends with you just because you lived across the street. And it was easy. We were all before each other, but that's what it was. No, it's like I remember when I graduated high school, I had all these friends and it's just like the second we graduated, it was just like bye. Yeah. I think we all had that. I also think it was a really interesting way to use genre, like in something that was really more of a contemporary feeling book. Just using the genre in a way that was different than the very classic sci-fi fantasy novel. And I would recommend it. No, I'd recommend it. I did recommend it. Yeah. You semi-precipitated this. So we almost come to our end of our bad beer. I can't really see the future. Vision just came over me. I think I know which one we going to read next time. Oh, you rewrite. Oh me God. I am seeing it too. All right. No, wait. We retabulating your votes. I am seeing a lightning bolt. And someone living in New Jersey. Is this the future? It's the future. It's the future. Okay, so this will be the next one we talk about. And I guess we're going to go ahead and catch up because 12 just came out. So we're going to go ahead and catch up to 12. Primarily, it's going to be volume 1 whatever. As always, leave comments at chesapocalypse.com. If you're rewatching this on YouTube, please go to chesapocalypse.com and leave comments there. But please subscribe to our YouTube channel. which exists now. Marvel next week. Whoa. This bat beer really does work. Whoa. Cheers, everyone. Bye.